Have you ever wanted to create a multi-page document in Adobe Illustrator? Whether that's 2 pages, 3 pages, or 10, it's possible. Now, if you're gonna do more than that, you're gonna do a magazine, a 20, 30 page document, then yeah, InDesign. Adobe Illustrator is the industry standard, and it's what we're gonna use today. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna start off by opening a project that I've created previously for this particular client, and it's right here. And this is just a helpful way to start. So if you have a document you've already created or that has been created by another designer that you've been given, and then it's always a good way to start. So to start off, you'll see I've got the artboard over here on the right, and that could also be considered the page. So these are the boundaries of the page. And to be able to select the artboard, you have to have this artboard icon selected. So right now it's just artboard 1, artboard 2. It's only a 2-page document, so there's not a whole lot of pages to, keep track of. But as you get more pages, it's helpful to name those pages. So, just using the normal selection tool up here on the left, you can double click on the title here and, observe point page 1, and then you could copy that and paste that over here. And as I'm going, you'll notice up here in the top left, there will be my keystrokes. So anytime I am clicking on my keyboard, you'll see those appear there. So I won't, in most cases I'll try to use menu items, but in those cases where I am using keyboard shortcuts, those will appear in the top left. All right, so let's say you were given a blank page or, a blank document. And you didn't have something to start with. Well, in that case, you would just hit new. And then this is, a standard 8.5 by 11 page document. So you can go to print, these print settings, and here's our blank document presets. We've got letter here, which is the one we want. Whether it's going to be used for printing or web only, you can change the color mode. I like to work in RGB, and then at the end, I might switch that to CMYK if it's being printed to ensure that the settings are better. We're getting this little warning icon here because it's basically saying you chose a print preset, but yet you're using RGB. Are you sure you want to do that? And yeah, we do. So it's created a new page, and you can get started with that blank page. And this is again an artboard. If we want to see our rulers or change the units, we can hit Command R and then right click on the ruler. We could change it to inches, and then we'll see the 0 is lined up right here, and then 8, 8.5. And then this 0 here, and then all the way down to 11. So you can see that it's correctly sized. And in terms of pixels, this is pretty small, So if we were to change our units to pixels, it's only 600 and something pixels across by 800 pixels tall, so relatively small. But this is a vector application, and so when viewed, at larger sizes on larger screens and stuff, you won't have a loss of quality as long as you're using, high enough resolution images, and then your text and your vector graphics will all scale. And, you could certainly work at bigger sizes. We could go over to, let's select artboard, and we could change this to pixels lock this and change this to 1224, and then it's double the size or something. But then your font sizes will be kind of messed up. So if you've ever worked with printing at all, here I clicked on the page with my text tool, and it gives me some quick placeholder text at a 12-point font size, which is very readable by most everyone when printed out. And if I were to do 12-point type, on a page that's double the size, then all of a sudden, it gets a lot smaller. So that's helpful. And then, let's say you had some subtext that was really supposed to be tiny, you could go all the way down to maybe 8, and it's going to be a strain for some people to read, but it's passable in most print type of scenarios. And then obviously if it's being viewed digitally, then the user can zoom in and read what they need to. But 12 is a little big in my opinion for body copy, so I'll usually do a 9 or a 10, which at that point the subtext could actually go down to a 6, especially if it's digital. So anyways, those are kind of my rule of thumb as far as fonts go and starting a new page, a new document from scratch. But like I said, we're going to be working from an existing document. And you might say, why do that? If the content is totally different. Well, my reasoning is that this is something the client liked. We have some things already in place, like, in the footer, we've got a copyright and logo, size and position where we want it. We've got the main body copy, you see, with the Montserrat font at size 9 and a line height of 14 points. So things are already in here. We've got the kind of H2 size titles are in this blue color at 16 points. So that is my reasoning, and it just kind of helps keep things on brand. I've already got these colors in my document. I don't have to copy and paste them from another one, but that's just a preference thing. So to start out, you are most likely going to have a source document. So this was provided by the client, and they've given me their text. And clients don't always do this, but they've created some drawings of some graphics that they want created. So that's helpful. And we're not going to spend a lot of time, if any, on creating graphics. That's kind of a separate lesson. But I'll show you how I deal with those kind of at this design stage. Worrying about pixel perfection right out of the gates when you're designing something like a multi-page document, whether it's a double-sided one-pager, a two-pager, 3 or 4 pages, it doesn't matter. You need to get that content on the page first. Giving me instruction here, and a lot of times, excuse me, the client will add a note or a different color text or font to kind of describe like a visual or some of their ideas as far as layout or design goes. So start with the first page, and this may seem backwards, but you can just kind of drag some of this content out of the way for now, and we might pull from it later. Whether or not, I think we'll go with a different style hero section here. And this text has been flattened because I customized it a little bit, so I'm just going to delete that. Let's just move this to the side, and this will be kind of the block of text I'll use to start with for my heading or headline. Gonna get rid of this image, get rid of all these. I mean, these graphics, maybe we'll need to reference them so we can move them. Some of these elements I don't need. Yeah, we're gonna make this a little different, so maybe this black area will be wider. And at this point, we're not worried at all with anything. This is not quite black. And actually the black I think we usually use for this client is 191919. So I'll change that here. I wanted to pause this video real quick because I need you to do a favor for me. Like, subscribe, and maybe even leave a comment. Change this text to white. So this gives us enough to just start throwing stuff on the page. So back over here, I'm gonna grab the headline, copy that, and double click on this text here to highlight it, and then Command V to paste it in. Here I go out of habit talking about my keyboard shortcuts rather than just relying on what's happening up there in the top left. Okay, so here's our title. You know, definitely gonna play with how that's laid out. You know, the size potentially as well. And this all depends in the end on the copy, you know. Can we fit a really big title up here? Or are we gonna need to make it smaller because there's a certain amount of copy that needs to go on page 1? Okay. And you know, there are times where the client will say, hey, this is being printed, it's a double-sided one-pager, or sometimes they'll call that a two-pager. Then somehow you've got to make it work. But otherwise, if it's digital, we could make it 3 pages. If it's in print, you want to do it in multiple of 2 or 4. You know, 4 if it's a multi-page book with spreads, but that's a different topic. But for something like this, just double-sided loose sheets, then multiples of 2, so you can have a front and a back. But we'll see how this all lays out. So back to our content here. So we're going to take the subhead, copy that. And I didn't have a subhead really in the previous one, so we can kind of just pull something else here. I'm going to hold down Command and drag this piece of text over here. Probably not going to leave it blue, but that's about the size that I think we want for our subhead. And see, when I click on that, I'm not seeing like a bigger box around it, whereas this one has a bigger box. This is pretty tight, so that tells me it's a point type. So if I click on here, I can convert it to an area type. And I'll show you why I want to do that, because if I want this to wrap to multiple lines, if I start to drag this, it's not wrapping to multiple lines, it's just squishing the text, right? So if I change it to convert to area type, then I drag it down and we can get multiple lines. So we'll do that. Let's make this like a light, and we'll make it white for now. Might come back to it. This particular client likes their black and yellow primarily. We have some complementary colors that can be used very sparingly. All right, so first piece of copy, and because this below here is just basically another paragraph of the copy block, I'm gonna grab both of those and double click. Once I'm in here, I can select it all, Command A or Control A, then paste it in, and Command V or Control V, or another way to paste is just right, whoops. Come on. It's just right click and hit paste right here. and then paste it in there, or you can paste it up here. There's lots of ways to do things. So let's just assume this is going to be basically full width. We don't know yet. And there was something I noticed from this document is they have some bolding going on here. So I want to capture that. Strong collaboration across teams. Or stronger. So go ahead and select that and we will make it bold. Okay, just so that that doesn't get lost in translation. All right, so now we have another kind of title within the document and an image. So that's basically an H2, which is this blue. And you know, I like the spacing, the padding here. So what I can do is Command C to copy, and then click over on this artboard and Command Shift V to paste it in place. Now, not where I want it vertically, but horizontally it is. I can grab it, hold down Shift, bring it down, and that'll lock it into place as I drag it. And you can see I've got this guide here to generally help me align this stuff. And it's not aligned by the text, it's aligned by the box. And it's all, you know, depending on preference and what you're doing, you know, whether you want to nudge that over. Now this brings up a good little gotcha. So you can see I'm using my arrow keys to nudge this over left or right, you know, up or down, and it's moving a certain distance, and it's too much for what I wanted. If I wanted this round part to be dead on, that's kind of a big jump. So with nothing selected, I can come over to my properties tab over here, and then they have keyboard increment. Right now it's set to 1 pixel, but if we did like a 0.2 pixels, it's moving at the sub-pixel level. So now if we arrow over, you can see I have more control. It takes more arrow overs to get over there, but now I'm right on. And I could go down to 0.1 or even lower. And then holding down Shift kind of is a times 10 on that. So it's jumping by, I think, 20 pixels instead of just 2. Okay, so keep that in mind if your arrow keys, as you're trying to nudge things, doesn't get you where you want. Okay, so back to our document, we're gonna select this title, copy it, select this, paste it in. So, you know, it's tedious, it takes a minute. We've got this image. We don't know how much space it's gonna take up for sure, but so let's just draw a box basically to represent that. I mean, it probably needs to be about that big to have, you know, enough visibility to see everything we need to. Now, the client has written this text inside of these little arrows. I'm going to handle it a little differently just to make it more readable. So we can get away with the smaller size potentially. But that's a good placeholder for now. And then they have a caption called the problem. So this is where we decide what size of font our caption is going to be. And I think I probably want it basically the same size as this copyright, which is 6 point. While I'm here, I'm just going to change that to 26 since that's the year we're in. Barely. So what did it say there? The problem. And it's just a couple of words, so I'll just type it. And I've got it left aligned over here. Now, so if your layout doesn't look like mine, don't fret. You know, if you're like, hey, I'm not seeing this properties panel over here. Up at the very top, it's actually outside of the recording window. There's a window drop down, which gives you this properties option, And so you could pull that up and then it will show up, or based on which workspace you want to use. You can see I'm using Essentials Classic. So if you want to follow along, you could check that, and it's going to be fairly close to what I have. All right, so we got that there. Now we've got this blank space over here. So either we're gonna have to shorten the size of the hero section, or maybe this image would end up wider in the end, or it might make sense to close some copy right here, some text. So let's see what we got here. We got marketing analytics, plus this, and this is all underneath this heading or title. And then a new one starts here with the new image and everything. So, excuse me, there's a chance that this text can actually fit in this area. So let's attempt that, shall we? So I'm just holding down Command or Control to drag this box. And then don't worry about this line here. That was kind of an extra line where I was trying to get the spacing for the logo. But we're actually going by this line here for this box. So it's just a duplicate of this text for now. We're gonna come over here, and you could just, you know, copy all this. Let's try that. And we paste it in, and we get a feeling for how it's fitting, which not super great at the moment. That's okay, we got some things we can try. And, you know, we've lost our bullet point formatting and stuff, so those are all things to address. So like if this were to be made smaller, let's say it could fit there, and then we were able to widen this out a little, then boom, we've got theoretically enough room. So that'll be our kind of working theory that we're going to be able to make this work here. Okay, so right now this brings up a question about layout in general. What's right, what's wrong, da 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 da, you know. And the short answer is it's subjective. And there's no real right or wrong. However, for design to look clean and appealing, you know, it needs to be intentional. It needs to feel intentional. So that's where alignment, layout, grids come in. So right now you can see for this image and this text, I'm going off of these kind of margin lines here. But then this text is in set more. So to free up a little bit more space, maybe we can have the same kind of alignment. And that didn't really free up any space, but you can imagine that it might in some cases. But then we've got this image and this text, and it's almost exactly 50-50, right? Like this right column is the same width roughly as this left column, and we can check that real quickly by just dragging this over to the other side. Make sure that's snapped. You know, and yeah, it's right on, right there. And then we've got a margin, so 50-50, exactly, essentially. And so that is an acceptable layout, right? But then if it was maybe barely one way or the other, it would feel a little off. It's not, you know, it's like, is that supposed to be 50-50 or not? So my rule of thumb is actually a real rule. It's kind of the law of thirds or whatever, where, you know, 1, 2, 3, and you can essentially do it that way. But now this image is likely getting way too small. You know, maybe we could make it work more vertically. But even if this isn't exactly the rule of thirds, it isn't exactly 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3, it feels better than something that's just barely not 50-50. This feels intentional. So that's something I'll always be thinking about. Let's go back to this image here. Is there any possible way that would work in this size? I don't think so. So we're gonna go back to the 50-50 layout, so this has more room, and vertically we'll likely take advantage of that, so it'll work out nicely. Yep. Make it a little tighter up to this title. And at this stage, I'm not super worried about the spacing between images and text blocks or titles, headings compared to the next text box. Those are all things that we can fine tune later. And I find that if you get, you know, too in the weeds with that stuff early, then it can thwart creativity, slow you down, which, you know, time is money, and just make your life more miserable. So right now we're just generally trying to get spacing and sizing, and then once we're close, then we'll go through and standardize things like, you know, now he's got his subhead like 12 point here, which is smaller than his H2. Is that for sure what he wants? And are we using this somewhere else? Or, you know, I was started with 10, but I decided to go down to 9, or bullets, I decided to do tighter line height. So let's make sure we do that on all of our bullets. All those things are things to consider. Before I move on from this section, I want to make sure I capture a few things. That these are like H3s, headline 3s, so what is going to be the size and treatment of those? And we're just going to make them a little bigger and bold them for now. Like I said, that could very well change. And one thing you can do, you don't want to keep coming over here changing things, you can use your eyedropper. So once this is selected, and click on the type of text you want applied, and then boom, it changes those settings for you. So that may be quicker for you. So play around, see what works. And then this is a block of text. Oh, that's a new section. Okay, this is this block of text. So these are all bullets. So if we select this, add our bullet here, and you can see it throws it way to the right, which could affect our layout a little bit. See, it gave us an extra 2 lines, which is frustrating. So there are things you can do here, like this is where InDesign is nice because you can create a style for this that can be applied for every time you have bullets. But you know, Illustrator may have that to some degree, but it's not something that I'm familiar with. So to edit the style of the bullets, what we need to do is over here on the bullets, there's a little triangle drop down, and then there's this 3-dot button. Click that, and we've got what level of bullets. So this is just level 1. We don't have bullets within bullets. You can pick the type of character, like nothing, we don't want to see, which now it's not a bullet, or circle filled in, a line, a circle that's not filled in, or a square. These are kind of the defaults. So we'll leave it the circle, but you can play with these first line indent and left indents to kind of change the way it behaves. So I'm gonna bring that down, bring this one down. And so now we've got 12 by -10. I like the distance of the bullet. We may replace it with something custom, but for now, that works. But what I don't like is that the line height is the same as basically the distance between each of these list items. So I'm gonna select that text and change the line height down. Okay, moving on here. So we've got this first page pretty much populated and blocked in. Now it's time to go back to our copy here. Let's see. Where did I put that? There it is. All right, so we've got our image, and then we work to kind of incorporate this copy over here on the side of where the image will live. Now, new page, let's go ahead and move all of this out of the way. And now let's see here, what's the next type of content? So we've got one of these titles here, and that's basically an H2. So we have the situation, and then here's the solution basically. So go ahead and copy that, and grab our H2 line over here, double click on that, paste it in. And I don't, as you can see, I don't have these guidelines over here on my second page. So just a couple of different things we could do. So here's what I'm going to recommend. First of all, let's find out where are these guides, which layer. Okay, so they're on this layer 1. And then what I can do is as I hover over a guide, I can right click, and you've got hide guides, you've got unlock guides. I'm going to unlock them. And that way I can select them just like any other object on the screen. So you can see that's turned red. I'm just going to delete that one. Then I'm going to select these other ones just by drawing a square around it. And then I'm going to command, well actually we don't need this one because it's already on there. So just these two. We'll command Control C and then click on this artboard and command Shift B. Did that work? Nope. See, it pasted it over there on the other one. All right, so let's try that again. So we're on here, click. So make sure that you're clicking on the first artboard so it has something to reference it by. Command C. Okay, now we're clicking on the second artboard. Command Shift B. There we go. So now we've copied those guides over. And I will go ahead and go to my menu up here at the top, View, down to Guides, and I'll lock the guides so that way I don't accidentally select them and move them around. Another way you can do that is put them on a different layer. So whatever you want to do there. Let's go ahead and bring our rulers back, and you can do that by going to View and then Rulers, Show Rulers, and if we can drag a guide to the top of this observe point logo here. Okay. And you can see those little pink, if you look by my cursor, you see those little pink text coming up. Those are called smart guides. And the way you enable or disable those is you can go to View again at the top, and then down to Smart Guides, and see I've got it checked. And the keyboard shortcut for that is Command or Control U. And that just makes it so things kind of give you a visual reference as to when they're, excuse me, snapping. So see it saying, look, you're on the guide, we're gonna snap things to the guide. As I drag this over, you can see that little crosshair snap to the guide. So those can be handy, but they can also get in the way sometimes if you're really trying to move things and you don't want it to snap. So oftentimes I'll enable and disable that as I go. All right. Hopefully you're picking a thing or two up here. So now we have a block of text and then this image. Okay. And again, I think this image can fit in an image roughly the same size. So I'm just gonna copy it over. And let's just try, you know, it may end up being slightly different size just because we don't want things to be too matchy uniform. Then I'll drag over this block of text, and I'm just holding down Command or Control to duplicate that. And again, you know, yeah, in the end, to make things really tight, it's important to get your spacing the same between your H2s and your design elements and all that stuff. But right now we're blocking stuff in. So we'll go back at the very end and check all of our spacing. And if it looks good to the eye, I mean, honestly, you know, depending on how much of a hurry you're in, you might be okay. But in a perfect world, we'll have time to go back and adjust all that. And sometimes I'll send the first draft over without doing that, you know, because we try to work fast and clients are inevitably going to have some kind of feedback. So being able to tell them essentially like, hey, this is, or give them that opportunity rather, you know, here I'm trying to type and talk at the same time. You know, so you send it over, you know there's going to be changes, or maybe you tell them that, hey, we still need to do some final cleanup, or you know, here it is without the actual images in place, just so you can see the general layout and get their feedback. So don't be afraid to share things with clients along the way, as long as you know, give them those disclaimers, what to expect. All right, so we've got this little bit of text here, and then the proof from customers, that's another H2. So that's a new section basically. So this should be able to fit no problem, just along here. So, and then we'll start the new section here. So that works good. And it kind of follows our same layout for the most part. We had an image and then all the copy on the one side, and let it be. All right, so I don't know if I'm going to want that part as this part of the same text block, so I'm going to duplicate that, paste this in, and you can see we lost all of our formatting. So, and it's like I never finished making these adjustments to these bullets. Just out of curiosity, I don't know if the eyedropper will grab all that or not. Let's try. Yep. Okay, cool. I jump from program to program, so I'm always having to remind myself of how it works in different programs, but that works out good here because now we can take these 3 bullets. So see, get, understand, see, get, understand, and where does that end? I don't know. We'll just try this. And then we'll use our eyedropper, grab that, and yeah, I grabbed the entire line. So that's helpful. Now I can just fix it by selecting the whole thing and make sure all the text is formatted correctly. Okay. And then this piece right here would be formatted like this. So copy that over, the eyedropper. So again, I'm gonna make some changes most likely, but for this blockout stage, looking good. All right, let me just try, what does this look like with the space? See, and if I put up that much space in between all these, it's gonna really push this down, although we can get rid of a little space here. Do a shift, yeah, doesn't really change things. So that's kind of a hard return is a lot of space. So maybe I'll just select the line and try this. The before, well, no, it's after. Increase this right here in the bottom right to 6. Now select these and use my eyedropper tool. It will apply that same kind of spacing. So that comes in handy. And if you learn the keyboard shortcut for those things, which I believe is just the I, yep, I button, then that'll be even quicker. And look how well that lined up there. That's pretty good. So we will take that. That's feeling good. All right, moving on. So we remember that we're going to start a new section. So let's grab this H2 and go back to our content. So a lot of this stuff is really repetitive, but hey, that's how we learn, right? I don't know if that works for you, but it certainly does for me. The more I see something done again and again, and then I go and do that thing again and again, it really gets ingrained in me, like, okay, maybe this is how you do it. And it just becomes second nature. All right, then we've got, okay, bullets again. And then these, so this is proof from customers. So this is an interesting thing. So these bullets here were just simple text bullets, and then we had, like, we'll have these nice big images to kind of add interest to that section. But here, and this is why it's important to kind of pay attention to the content, you know, we've got these numbers here. And so whenever I see stats like this, I think infographic, or how can I make that look more interesting rather than just a bullet point. And then, you know, these are obviously quotes from customers, and we've got, you know, Southwest Airlines, Lenovo, Standard. So these are going to be all formatted as nice little quotes. And this is the last section before kind of the call to action. We're starting to run out of space at this point, so we got to ask ourselves, you know, is it, if the requirement was to fit it on 2 pages, I would say we probably would struggle to do that, even if we majorly shrink the size of this, because even if this was as small as it possibly could be, this hero section, I think we would struggle to get this in here. So I'm calling it right now, this has to be at least 3 pages, and you know, it might even be worth making it 4 if it's going to be printed, right? So got this copy from previous thing that we did, and here you can see an example of some stats. So like these bullet points. So I could use this same formatting, and actually that's a good way to do it a lot of the times. See, we have 3 and we've got 3, you know, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna use the same kind of module, if you will. And then we'll have that final bullet here will just be, you know, text, and it won't be a bullet, it'll just live in here. So, and we're gonna come through and format everything, make sure that it makes sense and it reads correctly. But right now, we're just blocking things out, and we have to remind ourselves of that all the time. So this is 27%, and I can just change that. This is 33% of that. This is 163x. And I actually like to use a capital X, that's my preference. And then sometimes I'll take, depending on the space I'm working with or what I've done otherwhere in the document or brand, I'll make the percentage sign, or even take this X and apply this, I forget what, superscript, is that what it's called? Process, and let's use this alternate option it gave me for an X, which, yeah, that looks nice. Okay, so we'll do that. All right, and then they've got a little bit more text, and the one line or the one word for each of these is bolded, so we can decide if we want to handle that differently. And then I've got my auto kind of spell check, grammar check going on, and it's like, hey, this isn't capitalized, that's why there's this squiggly red line under there. And I definitely recommend doing a spell check or turning this on before you call your project done. But sometimes that distracts me because I see these weird little red lines everywhere, and it's like messes with the design for me. So you can go up to edit and go to spelling and turn off auto spell check, and then that'll get rid of those squiggly red lines. Okay. Well, that's in there. Copy this, replace that. Oh, missed an R, you guys forgot to tell me. Grab this one. Oh, I missed a T. So as you can see, copy and paste doesn't always do it perfectly, because, you know, there's still chance for user error. So just so we remember, we'll go ahead and make this first word of each of these bold, and I may give it a different treatment later to make it stand out even more. But because we know we're already going to have at least 3 pages, you might as well make, this take up more room essentially, and then maybe we'll start the customer quotes on the next page, or we could put the first quote here and the other 4 or 5 here, and then the CTA. So we'll see how it goes. All right, now to create a new page. This is a new addition to the most recent or 2 versions of Illustrator. Is when you have your artboard tool selected, you get these little plus icons here. And by clicking that, it creates a duplicate artboard to the side of whichever place you click on that plus. So if I were to do it down here, it'll add a page down here. So that's nice. Because in the past you'd have to kind of command and drag it. And then if you had this little option selected, move artwork with the artboard, it would duplicate all the content as well. So this little plus icon just keeps us from having to do that. So nice little quality of life feature there. I'm gonna make this text bigger just to kind of remind myself that this is different. Okay. And since we're talking about customers or whatever, before getting into the quotes, it could be a way to make this page more interesting to add some image down here that represents customers. Doesn't necessarily have to be a stock photo of people. It could be some technical illustration or anything. But for now, we're still in the blocking out text phase. And so we will not do that. And now that I'm looking at this, I may actually make this first page a lot less content and start this on the second page. The situation, because we may be able to fit the situation and the solution on the same page. In fact, I'm really thinking that's gonna happen. So I know I said we're just blocking things out, but part of blocking things out is making decisions early on so you can be a little more loose with how things are done. And I know my speech isn't keeping up with my mind, or vice versa. So let me just show you what I'm going to do here. First, I'm just going to duplicate this footer piece on each of them. But let's go ahead and duplicate these guides again. So right click on them, unlock guides. So we want to make sure we click on this artboard, select these 2, copy them, click on this artboard, Command Shift V to paste in place. And there you go. Now up to view, and we could probably do this on a right click as well, but I like to show you multiple ways. So we block the guides again. So now, just so I keep kind of the same placement of this on the new page, I'm going to select it, cut it, Command X, or you can go up to Edit, Cut, and then over here, I'll show you how to do it through a drop down. So clicking on this artboard, Edit, Paste in Place, and then that just pastes it here. And so I'm going to want it up at the top, so holding down Shift, I just slide all this up to the top. Okay, and then we'll take this bit and slide it down. Okay. I'm optimistic this is going to fit. So now I'm going to grab this, cut it, and then click on this artboard, paste it in place, holding down shift and drag it up. And look at this. Yeah, we've got plenty of room for both of these. I think it makes more sense to have the situation or the problem. And I would probably recommend changing that to the problem. And then the observe point solution works, but you know, that's something you're certainly welcome to suggest to your client, maybe even make that change in your design. But then when you share this with them, let them know like, hey, happy to change this back or whatever, but this made more sense to me, so I just went ahead and tried it and thought I'd run it by you to see what you all think. And then they may be like, yeah, we thought about that, but the decision was made not to do that, and so please change it back. And it's like, cool, hey, it's all good. So I was just messing around with, do we want that on multiple lines, keep it on the same line? I think keeping it on the same line makes more sense, so just undo a couple of those and we can play with spacing and everything later. But now what this does for us is we can do something really different and unique here with this almost cover. Like if this were a magazine article, you would have a big image in the background or something, and then cool treatment with the title, and it just looks super sexy. So that's kind of what I'm thinking and why I decided to switch gears. And that also works good because that was the client brief as well, is to, hey, can we make this darker? Can we make it stand out? And you might say, well, okay, does that mean we're going to make every page darker? And no, not necessarily. So, and I can't remember if I mentioned this earlier on, but like this big shape back here can quickly get in the way. I like to make sure to extend it a little farther out from the edges of the artboard, just so that we don't accidentally get a weird white line in there when we save everything out. But so what I'll do is I'll create a layer here, the bottom, drag it to the bottom. We could even double click on it and name it BG for background. Then with that shape selected, you get this little square over here that's the same color as the layer. So this layer is red, green, blue. So I grab this red square and I just drag it down to the lower layer, and then that automatically puts it on that lower layer. And then what I can do is lock that layer, and now when I drag to select, I'm not selecting that black box, just selecting the items on these layers that are not locked. So we'll play around with this later as we get to design, but might have a bigger logo. Decide where to put that. Maybe text will be treated a little different and be bigger, but we've got this bigger area as that obviously signifies like, hey, this is the start of this document. And that's the nice thing about multi-page documents as opposed to just like a 2-pager or 1-pager, is you've got the room to do this, and I think it makes the piece feel more professional, intentional, and so forth. Sometimes it just makes sense to have a 1-pager, but we gotta avoid the temptation, and I'm speaking to all the clients out there, of putting too much copy in that limited amount of space. Because having some breathing room, having some white space is important. You know, and this title doesn't have to start at the top of the page either. We can have a little bit more padding up there. All right, so back to the flow. So this feels like it has less white space than it actually will, because in the end, it's not going to be a big blue block there. It'll be an illustration that takes up the space within there, but then white space will be able to flow all around it. So it'll be nice. And, you know, one could decide that, hey, we're going to go ahead and change the way things are laid out a little bit in the process, like maybe both images are on the left side and all the copy is on the right side. But for now, we're going with this asymmetrical layout. Okay, back to our document, content document. Okay, so now we have these quotes, so I'm going to grab the first one. I'm not sure what the style will be, and we got to decide how much we can fit. Again, we're going to assume that they may want to print this, so we will still be doing one more page. So let's just make that happen now. So because we're going to have one more page, let's see, bring this down, and I'll draw little marquees to see if things lined up. I got a little notification, or whatever you want to call it, from my smart guides that like highlighted a little stronger, which showed me that those were lined up, but I just wanted to double check. All right, so let's just grab this block of text, double click, paste. So here's our first quote. We're not sure how we're gonna lay it out for sure, but we're just blocking it in right now. How many times do I have to say that? And at this size of a font and everything, it definitely doesn't take up a lot of space, so we'll make it a little bigger for now. We may very likely be bringing that back down. Digital analyst, top 10 goals. So I doubt digital analyst is the name of a company. It's basically, yeah, top 10 global investment management company. So it's basically saying that, hey, we don't have permission to use the name of the company, but this is a quote from somebody in that in a level of importance in the industry, or however you want to say it. So that's definitely a valuable way to do things, and still is better than not using this quote at all, even though you can't use the person's name exactly or the company. And I don't know if I'm going to use black behind these. That may be too heavy. We'll see in the end, but that's what we're going to do at this moment. Okay. Select all that, paste. Just separate that out. I'm definitely gonna lay it out differently, but placeholder for now. That one should actually be a little taller because it's got a little bit more content. Okay, what about this one? Okay, this is Lenovo, and this time I'm just gonna copy and paste them in pieces. So whatever you're feeling. Okay. And how many more do we have? One, and this one's a long one. Two more, and then the CTA. So let's go ahead and copy these two, and then click over here. Whoops. Gotta make sure before we copy, we're on this artboard. Now we copy these two. Click on this artboard, Command Shift V, and as you can see, we don't have our guides, so back to guides, unlocking the guides, copying the guides, pasting the guide. Whoa, I gotta paste in place. All right, let's try this again. Click on this artboard, copy these guides, click on this artboard, paste in place. All right, and then right click, block guides. Okay, drag these up a little higher here, and I think that top one's gonna end up being bigger because it had like double the size of the quote. Then we come over here, grab this quote from the standard. Okay, yeah. I think that's just one giant paragraph. Whoops. You saw that text pop in, and I quickly undid it, but what it was is I had the text tool active, and then I clicked on a box. Yeah, and then it fills it, turns it into a text box basically. So I had to undo that. And I hit Command Z for undo, but you can also go up to edit at the top and do undo that way. All right, one more quote. Copy this. Senior Manager at Adobe. Make that one a little taller as well. So this way, hopefully you're getting a feel for the method of madness, if you will. And if we really needed to, I think these quotes could all fit on the one page, but it would be a lot more crammed, and we could even, make the text smaller, add logos to all these, or an image of the person, or make these take up less of the page, and then there's some kind of background image. So lots of options, lots of arrows in our quiver, if you will. And then the last thing is the call to action. We might as well grab this box from previous document, paste it in here. It's bouncing around. Trying to get that all rights reserved lined up, but I don't know if it's exactly in the right spot. And it doesn't matter because it's in a different position, a different footer than these other ones, so just leave it be. And you don't necessarily have to have that on at the bottom of every single page, so all things we can play with down the road. I do remember this had 2 call to action, so I'm just going to make it taller to allow for that. So they had this customer CTA and a prospect CTA. Oh, if another team or organization can benefit, invite them to see. Oh, okay. If you're interested. Well, that's an interesting thing. Like should there be an argument for having two different versions of this document, one with this CTA call to action, and then another one with this CTA. So for now, I don't remember receiving that direction. We'll just assume they just want to have one, and we'll leave it be at the moment. I don't think we're actually going to say prospect CTA and customer CTA. We'll just have two different blocks of text in here. But we're going to duplicate that. And you saw initially when I dragged this over, it was behind this box here. And so what I did was, with it selected still, I did Command Shift square bracket. Look at that keyboard shortcut in the top left there, to bring it to the front. Another way you can do that is Object, all right, or Edit. Yeah, no. Object, Arrange, bring to front. So that's how you would do that. Or if you forget all that, you can go into the layer and move these around manually in front or behind another piece. So lots of ways to do the same thing essentially. I don't know if I'm going to keep this an H2 and that same color and size, but for now we'll leave it. Okay, I'm going to copy this and it's grouped together. So to ungroup it, and right click and say ungroup. This one doesn't have a button. Paste that. Drag out this text box so that all of the copy is visible. Maybe I'll have it span the whole thing. And you can see that as we make decisions, it affects other things, right? Like, does it still make sense to have the observe point logo right there? I don't know. Probably not. This one I'm double clicking on, and it's longer than what we had before, so that's fine. We gotta make this box bigger to handle all of this CTA action that's happening here. I think I would rather have this based on new copy. I want it different from the other pages, so we're changing the logo place, we're changing the color, the size, all of that as kind of a way to visually tell the user, the viewer, the consumer, whatever you want to call them, prospect, that, hey, you are on a different type of page. This is the end of the document. So whether they're looking at it digitally or physically, it just kind of like a piece of music where I'm going to butcher this explanation here, but basically, you know, you want that piece of music to resolve in a nice note or chord or series of notes. It's like, as the listener, you just need that to happen. This is a background piece, so I'm dragging it down to our background layer like we did before, so that I don't accidentally keep grabbing it, nudging. that around. What's my nudge at 0.2? Okay. So we've essentially blocked this out. It's not designed. Oh, one last thing. They have, please sign up for a demo. And as just a link, but I've got this kind of button thing going. So that's where it depends. As well, is this being printed or is this digital? And I would wager to guess that it's probably, could be both. So obviously on a printed piece, you can't click anything. So that doesn't make sense. So the way that we kind of handle that is by taking this URL and turning it into a QR code. All right, so I'm going to show you how I do that. Click on here and generate free QR code. Excuse me. And so we want to scroll down until we find this QR code monkey. This is the one that I use all the time. It's actually free. It says it's 100% free. Because some of these purposely try to lock you into their system. They convert your URL into a short URL, they manage it here, and then they create a QR code off of that. So as soon as you stop paying for this service, your QR code will no longer work. But really a QR code is just taking this, whatever URL or text that you have, and turning it into this visual scanner code that can be read by anything. So that's why the more text you have, the busier this looks. I'm gonna go ahead and create the QR code and see this is even busier than what was there before, but that's okay. Now, if you wanna pay for a service to make this really small and unique, and then this will be more simple, then great, but just know that you're locked in to that service. I like to use the SVG, so I'll download an SVG by clicking on that, and you can see it's creating it right now. This is just an ad, we don't need to click on anything here. So, and then we saw a little animation showing this come to download, and so it's been downloaded. So now if I go to my file system, I can go to my downloads, and on a PC it's gonna be different. But here it is here. And then, so on a Mac, I can toggle over to this screen, and I'm using Command Tab here to toggle between things. And then I can just grab this QR code and drag it here into Illustrator, and then it brings it into its own document. But if you were, not on a Mac and you're on a PC, or you just don't know how to do that, you can go up to File, Open, and then go to your downloads and open the QR code, and it'll do the same thing. It's basically saying it's already open, so I'm gonna say no, but here it is. Okay, and you can just copy and paste this over there, but I'm kind of OCD, so you see this is selected, it all looks black. Then when we look over here, this question mark tells me that there's more than just black. I like to double click on this thing, select just one piece of it. It's just black. And then I'll go up to select in my top menu and do same fill color. So it selects everything that is only black. So I can drag that away over to the side here. In this area, it looks like nothing's there, but if I draw a rectangle, select things, look, there's other crap and shapes that are transparent. So I just delete those. Oh. All right, let's do this again. So I've selected everything I went up to select, same, fill color. And then what I like to do is in Pathfinder, combine those with this guy right here. And then with this drop down and then this drop down, make compound shape, expand. So now it's one black shape all by itself. We have these other transparent squares that were generated, but now this will be easier for me to work with. You don't have to go through all those steps, but that's what I like to do. So I'll cut it, come to this document, paste it in here, then holding down Shift, I'll scale it down. And the reason I hold down Shift is to ensure that we constrain it to square. Because if I tried to just scale it down, look, it can easily become misshapen and then it won't work anymore. So you gotta hold down Shift. Get it down to size that will work. Get rid of, well, we're gonna keep that piece of text because we'll use that as a label. Get rid of that. I'm gonna draw a white box, holding down Shift, that'll keep it a square. And then that gives me a nice area of contrast. Place my QR code in. Because if we tried to put black on top of black, it's probably not gonna pick it up. Okay, and this is pretty much perfect size. And so you could manually try to center that with that white box. You know, nudge things around, try to get it where you want. But, Illustrator has tools for that. So what you want to do, select one of the items and then select the other. So I've got the white box and then this black QR code selected. And I'll do that again because you hold down Shift to select multiple items. So we've got 2 items selected. But now I want to make sure that I center it based on this white box. So with Shift unselected, I'm going to click the white box again, and then my white box got this thicker red line around it. And so now that means that it's aligning it to the key object, basically. And now, so when I use this align on the vertical center, or horizontal center, however you want to phrase it, it's not, it just moved this black piece. And then if I click on this one, which is the horizontal line, which is centering it vertically, it centered that. And now unselect and it's perfectly centered. So that's something you might have to practice a few times for it to click, to work right or whatever. No, this is just a blockout stage here. That doesn't mean I can't play with the layout a little bit. Because I don't want this too close to the logo down there, but I also need to put this text under here, and I'm having to kind of make some changes from the content here because the way they wrote it. If you're interested in seeing how Observe4 can expand and smooth out cross-departmental processes, please do this, but we need to change it to, scan the QR code or something like that. So please scan the QR code. And the layout can kind of help the user determine what relates to what, since this is right aligned right next to this QR code, it knows that, hey, maybe they're talking about this guy right here. I don't know why. Doing some of this still here. Why on earth is smooth not dropping down? Oh, okay, because out, cross departmental can't fit without. So you might have to do some of your own. Hold down Shift and Enter to design the way this is laid out a little bit, so it's more pleasing. And I don't really know that that's the right solution, but start. Leaving request demo here is, or scan for demo. And this obviously, isn't necessarily my job to copyright this piece here, but it is helpful to wear multiple hats and suggest some things to your client, basically. I'm having to fix the way this all works out here. And we don't want this QR code to be too small because it is on the detailed side of things. So once printed, gotta make sure it can scan. And the way you do that is try it, print it on your home or office printer at 8.5 by 11 size, scan it, zoom out here, scan it from here. If it can read it at that size, you're probably in a good place, because this is probably close to, full size. So anyway, and then another kind of tool in the arsenal of any business person, designer, copywriter, whatever, is using AI. So I'm going to copy this block of text here. Just go ahead and go to chat, GPT, new chat, and say, well, you're an expert in marketing for SaaS businesses. Please help me improve the CTA to entice the user to click on the QR code. And because I'm pasting it from Illustrator, sometimes it thinks I want this image, so I don't. So I'm gonna undo that. And let's see what chat has to say. Okay, they like it already, blah, blah, blah. Scan the QR code to see how Observe Point streamlines cross-departmental workflows. This is good. Yeah, let's pick this one. And then again, this is something you want to, inform the client, like, assuming that this was going to be printed out, did this initial option with the QR code and had to kind of rewrite this CTA. So please let me know if that works or if you want to make any changes. And then 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, yeah, no, I appreciate your initiative there. That's awesome. It's super close. Why don't we just actually change it to say this? And they'll, give you their approved verbiage, but at least by you taking a stab at it, you kind of gave them something to start from. And you can see me playing with the shape of the text box here, and that's because part of design and the most important part is communication. And so you want to make sure things communicate clearly. And when you're reading something, if it has an edge that is like too ragged or goes from long to super short to long, it's just hard for the user to follow that. So you want to do a nice looking edge. So by playing with the size of this box, it's giving me a different edge, and you can see it drops it down to here, but this is not a good edge where we've got one word on each one, and then there's grammar type things like it's called an orphan because there's just one word on this line. So you might want to fix that. And usually I don't like hyphenation, so I try to avoid that. And this is being hidden here, but just under here there's this option to hyphenate it, so I can click that, and maybe that'll give you a better edge. It hyphenates it in a couple spots, but it's still, we've only got one word on that bottom one, so play with that. Okay, so now we just have one hyphenation, hyphen. And then it's a little more squared off. So something to be aware of, and depending on the client, they may have a preference and they'll call that out as they see fit. I think I'm gonna want this to be bigger and bolder, whether it's gonna be in blue or yellow or white. I don't know, we'll leave it in blue for now. But that, my friends, is the process of blocking out a multi-page document in Illustrator. So join me for the next series in these videos where I'll take this a little further and we'll start to actually make some design decisions, incorporate some of the artwork and so forth. But hopefully this gives you the tools to get started. And for junior designers that work for me, for example, a lot of the times I'm just looking for them to get the project to this point, and then me or one of my senior designers will take it further for them and kind of teach them along the way of like, okay, this is the next step. And then as they see that done several times, they can start to do more of that. Or if time allows, with the client and everything, then they'll give us this version, give them a little feedback like, yeah, I like where you're going, but when you go to design, maybe we do more with these text boxes, or maybe they don't take up as much room, so we can put some white space or imagery around those. But this is a good start. Go ahead and take it to the next step. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next video. Thanks. So there you have it. It's all blocked out. I hope you found that valuable. And next time, please join me as we tighten things up. Stay tuned. It's about to get exciting.